well, and she only lives maybe 2 miles from me, and my power was on. So Brittany actually had to improvise, and she's actually over here connected to my internet in a different area of the home broadcasting. So hey, Brittany, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing very well today. Thank you so much for having me. Despite everything, I'm glad I could be here.
I'm glad you could be here too because this has been crazy. It's just been a very crazy time. So, but yeah, and the reason I asked the two of you to join me is because we've both been on the show before. Because we know each other, we are colleagues in community in what we do, and I think it's about time we sort of sit down and just have a real raw chat about what's been happening in our communities, what's been happening in the world, what's happening in the recovery community, with those that are going through their issues. And of course, we're just rounding out May, where it was Mental Health Awareness Month, right smack dab in the middle of all this. So I'm really glad that we could do this. Kevin, how have you been handling these times, dealing with what you do through this whole day to day new living?
Yeah, it's been really difficult. To instantly move from having seen people in person for 20 years to suddenly we're doing telehealth. I had played with it over the years a little bit and decided I hated it and didn't want to do it ever. But now have to. And so, everything became telehealth. And so I'm seeing people and I'm seeing the people that I supervise and the clinics that I try to help run. And, it's been a massive, the whole world is on Zoom now, and it's just what it is. And Zoom, as we all know, or I think almost everyone knows at this point, is this strange format where you can't make eye contact, right? If you're looking at the screen, it looks like you're not looking at the person. And if you're looking into the camera lens, when you're actually not looking, you can't see what they're, so there's that problem. So you cannot make eye contact. And there's a slight disconnect between when you hear the sound and when you see movement. And so, you're constantly having to, we as creatures, have evolved for millions of years to be attuned to these really subtle movements and face and vocal tone, and all this stuff is really, really meaningful to us. And now instantly, within, we have to turn it all off and try to interpret things that we don't normally have to interpret. It just sucks. So anyway, I think it's a huge impairment for any type of professional service. It's just really, they call it Zoom fatigue, and I think it's very, very real.
And I agree with you. And it's funny you said that, because this morning I was thinking about all the Zoom connections I've made over the last few months. And I just did my show 2 days ago with Demetria Green from PHL 17. She's the morning anchor, and Dimitri and I were chatting. And this morning I'm thinking about that. I'm like, if I don't stare at the screen at them, I'm not quite sure they know I'm looking at them, because that little box in the corner shows that I'm not looking at myself. But then if I'm looking at myself, I'm not thinking. So I get really confused, and I'm just like, you know what? The heck with it. They must think I'm real ADD when I talk to them, because my head's going all over the place. So I'm glad you said that, because I just thought it was me. But I really just learned that I have to stare straight at my screen, and then I feel like then I'm looking at you, But it's got me to like 3 months of that. How about you, Brittany? How have you been handling this? How's this been for you?
It's been an adventure. The first half of it, I think I was actually a little bit, of course, more stressed out. There was a lot of fear of the unknown circulating. And just to dovetail what you guys were talking about, the nonverbal cues are so important to feeling supported, and you unfortunately don't really get that within a Zoom call. And I love that we've increased the opportunity for telehealth, because especially within the population that we serve and that we love, sometimes like transportation issues and things like that really are a barrier for people receiving the care that they need. So I love that this has opened the playing field more. But of course, with anything, there's definitely drawbacks. I recently started a new job, so I have been essentially navigating a whole new job scope by myself, with support from my colleagues. But That's probably been the hardest part. Simultaneously, we are fighting an epidemic within a pandemic. And now we have these awful, awful things happening in the world and the climate of the world. It's just a very sad, strange time.
Yeah.
I love how you said that we're fighting, an epidemic in the middle of a pandemic. And that really put things in perspective right there. That really just laid it out. I never really even looked at it like that. But how much more real can you get?
Yeah.
Especially for what we do and what we fight. Kevin, you've been doing telehealth. After 20 years of doing what you do, you had to make this switch where, even myself, I know that when I want to go see somebody and go speak to somebody, I need to go sit in front of them. Even this is a little bit different for me, the format, but let
Right.
alone trying to get some type of counseling through this. On my end, it's sort of like mind boggling. How's that for you trying to connect with your patients?
It's awful. I feel like I don't have the tools I normally have to do my job, and I got to do it anyway because something's better than nothing. But it's just in my opinion, it's very much a lesser form. But there's no alternative. I have seen across our clinics, a real drop off in terms of some people they don't feel it. It's not working for them. We've seen a lot of people, and I don't necessarily mean that like they're necessarily doing badly in their lives, but just that they were engaged in some type of therapy process and now they're not. Other people have been fine and they've stuck with it. But I think that it's it's just an inferior form of things.
I agree, and it's funny you say it because I myself, I know I probably would not be able to do this. I know I probably could not because I know I crave that human connection, in the same room connection. Just like when I learn like education, like I am the worst at online education. Like I started my master's course 3 times and stopped it 3 times because I couldn't do it online. I need to have that in classroom environment. So, that's really, been different as well too. Even with, me, we're all social beings. We're all very social beings, and people like myself and who crave, sometimes that social attention. It's been really lacking, for us over months. So
I wonder if what you're saying is, and I hadn't thought about it this way until you started describing your experience. I wonder if more extroverted people are having a harder time with telehealth than, oh no, did I lose you? Good Lord.
Hi.
It says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh yeah. Now we lost you.
I wonder if more extroverted people are needing more or are having a harder time with telehealth than more introverted people who seem to be coping a little bit better.
And it's something that probably peel some layers back and look at, because of the fact that there are these people who need that constant connection. Even for what we do in our outreach and things like that on the streets. Being that extrovert on the street and outreach. Brittany, I don't know if you've noticed it as well, dealing with the participants you deal with and your clients that you deal with, but like they crave the attention or affection a little bit more even now because they're not even able to get that hug. They're not even able to get within a proximity to talk like they're used to. And I'm just wondering how that's going to affect people in general. Brittany, have you noticed any of that and what you've been doing?
Absolutely. I think honestly, you hit the nail on the head. The hardest part is not being able to hug our people, because you also have to think how often are some of them receiving a loving embrace. And I'm a hugger, and even like after this, like what are the rules going to be? It's gonna be very difficult to adjust to. And I know that we learned a lot of what a pandemic would bring to, especially to our community of Kensington. The distribution of Narcan was significantly down, and the supply became more toxic because the fillers weren't in there anymore. It was just whatever. It's really scary. It's really scary. But the lack of Narcan was definitely something that was discerning. Usually, you go down and people will say, "No, I already have it. You save it for someone that needs it." But anytime I offered it to someone, it was like, "Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, we need it." And that was like the first day doing outreach. That was very appalling to me. So we're not used to it. I think we lost you, Britt.
That's because I had myself muted. Sorry about that. Talk about reality. You know, here we are sitting in the middle of this pandemic where, you know, life as we know it changes, not just day by day, but hour by hour. I actually had to turn the news off for a while. I had to stop getting the alerts. I couldn't even watch the press conferences anymore. I couldn't watch the updates because it was just so crazy. But not only in the middle of that, where it's something that we don't really know what's going on, something that we aren't familiar with, but then all of a sudden we get smacked with another issue. We get smacked with another, and this is a crisis. This is something that's been dividing our nation, not just recently, but for years, hundreds of years. And we are right now in the middle of some really hateful times. And on top of that pandemic, where people are losing their jobs, they're forced to stay at home, they're forced to cope with a new situation each and every day. We're now hit with this, where there's more division. How you guys been handling that aspect of it, Kevin? How's that been going for you?
God, I mean, there's so much in what you said. I don't even know which piece to talk about. But the hour by hour coping, as much as in support of the protests as I am, there have been unintended consequences from the rioting, which is that, not that they're the same thing, which is that a large part of my job is to make sure that people have access to medication. And of the 148 pharmacies that we work with, about half of them have either been looted or closed. And so I got my team, and we sort of like, all right, what are we doing? And then everyone called everywhere, and we made a list of, okay, this is open and we can push these people over here, and and we had this whole plan. And it took us like a good full day. This is Monday. But by the end of the day, we were getting calls back saying, well, I went to the pharmacy you sent me to and it's closed, because more pharmacies had been looted and closed over Monday. And it had changed from that morning. And it's just like constantly like reshuffling and it's just, and we're trying to roll with the punches and try to be as helpful as we can. But it's just constant emotional, there's so much compensating for this to compensate for that to compensate for the third thing. It's so draining on every level.
Do you think that this will have a direct correlation with what we see maybe in a spike in substance use going on right now?
Yes, for sure. There's long-standing data that whenever there's a crisis like this, that substance use in general goes up. My want to give just one stat about that. After Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans, they saw a 500% increase in alcohol sales in the following year, and that's of course in New Orleans, which is consumes a healthy amount of alcohol in a normal year. So I mean, I think that Philly being what it is, we're going to see a lot more of opiate use.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 150% with that. But that's crazy that you said that. What was the number? How much more times? 500?
500% increase.
500% increase
for the year after Katrina.
That's hard to wrap your head around. 500% increase the year after Katrina. And, that was 2005,
Correct.
Katrina, and think about how times have changed greatly in 15 years and what people are relying upon. Have you or Brittany, have you seen an upswing in any type of overdoses or substance use related issues?
Absolutely. I am working in the hospital and initially not deemed an essential worker because the work that I am pursuing, the research I'm pursuing, is addiction medicine. And we were able to confront that as a life-saving intervention because of the spike in the overdoses. I would like to say that I feel that there's a lot of hypocrisy within what we were dealing with within the pandemic, and then we have the data to show like how substance use may increase, because it really showed your privilege when people were so uncomfortable with the pandemic and having to stay home in the comforts of their home. And a lot of people normalized like the Zoom happy hours, and like there's like memes about it of parents that are joking about how their kid's not going to learn this year because they're drinking wine by 10 a.m. And it's like a laughable thing, right? Oh, it's comical. And it's like, do you think it's so comical when someone is having a problem, like problematic use in any other substance, but because it's normalized on social media and there's just, you know what I mean? There's like that influence there. It's incredibly frustrating, and it only adds to, honestly, my anger and my shame. I'm having a really hard time processing this. I'm very, very angry, and I'm very ashamed at white culture. And I understand that not everyone is the same, just like every protester isn't the same and every cop isn't the same. I can only speak for myself that I'm very ashamed of white people at this point. This has gone on too long, and this is our responsibility to rectify it, and it's long overdue.
I got to tell you, I agree with your sentiment, and I love the fact how brutally honest you are. And I think that's what we lack sometimes, is that honesty and letting people know our feelings and letting people know how we feel. And I feel if more people probably would be upfront about it like that from the beginning, saying, you know what, I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, or this is bothering me, we wouldn't get to these places in time. I mean, I know that we're all dealing, with things the best we can, but I still see this large percentage of people out there who are still turning a blind eye, who are still not getting it. So, guys, what do you think it's going to take for people to get it?
Keep talking.
Keep
Yes.
talking. Hmm.
Keep talking, and to not just be an anti-racist, but to be an ally to people of color, meaning reach out to them. For instance, like we are three white people on a conversation right now about race. If everybody else looks the same as you, you're probably not getting the full perspective that we should be. Like, this is the things that we need to be changing. And I'm losing my fear in sounding disrespectful by checking other people. I don't care anymore. I'm like, I'm just so fed up, and I'm just so heartbroken to see the community um, in this situation.
Agreed. Kevin, you have children, correct?
Yes.
How have you been dealing with this, with having children through? How old are your children, Kevin?
I just have one. She's
One.
12.
You have a 12-year-old. So that's a critical time in anybody's life. 12 years of age. That's one of those pivotal points. How have you been dealing with this with her?
So I think, I mean, my wife and I decided to sort of tell her what's going on in the news. I think Friday or Saturday, I forget, and try to explain the issue and so forth. And we went to a protest as a family on Sunday, and that was wild. And you know, there was a lot of things to kind of figure out, like uh, um, to try to break down. If you don't have a background and understanding of this, to say a phrase like "all lives matter" at a Black Lives event is the opposite of what the point of the event is, but it's not an intuitive thing, and so you have to lay in sort of the sort of that cultural thing, and there's just so much to talk about and try to do. It's there is nothing in formal education that I think prepares most people for how to be a citizen and how to think about what's happening and think about social justice. I mean, we've talked about social justice a lot, and we've done a lot of types of like Martin Luther King Day stuff, and we've done some things with her, but there's a lot more to try to sort of unpack all of this. And I don't know. I mean, I don't claim any particular wisdom about how to do it the right way, other than what Brittany says, just to try to keep talking about it and to try to name it. I struggle with. There has been a lot of criticism in the progressive circles that you guys know about, against being a moderate liberal, right? That half measures are just not going to cut it. They're not going to really make real change. And I struggle with that. Maybe that's correct. I have a hard time um, in the midst of so much upheaval. This is the right time to reevaluate our actions and what we're doing or not doing, and what we contribute, and how we can think about making a more equitable society. But I don't know. I also feel a lot of um, there's so many people, and there's so much anger, and I feel like what I have yet to experience is to connect with a voice of unity, of trying to move forward in a positive way that is sort of collectivist. I mean, I've been, like I'm saying, with my family, but otherwise in peaceful protests that have felt really great to me. But there's not a censor that I can detect, and so it's hard to try to try to think about racial issues and equity issues, and what exactly is the change that we want to see. I mean, this is about so much more than George Floyd. I feel like the long history of racial oppression, just specific to Philly, has focused on like the Rizzo statue, but like, dear God, the war on drugs and the people who are on State Road right now, and I mean, like, this is so much bigger than that. I have yet to work in any health system that didn't, when we crunch the numbers, show racial inequity within that agency. And this is like, where you think you're working with people that share the values that you have, or something close to it, and it's just there's a need for massive reform on every level, and it's overwhelming to even know where to start.
Yeah, and I think if I could just interject, I think where we need to start is by giving our people of color the platform to tell us where to start. They know.
Yeah.
That's the conversation that needs to be had and normalized way more than it has been.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's hard. It's hard, and it's a lot of unlearning and trying to deal with. For instance, like if you have parents as like a white person, and you have parents in like or an older generation, and just trying to like not hate them for what they think, because it's so learned, that it's incredibly frustrating. I don't want to say hate, but it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of people have humility in what they understand. They cling to what they know as if it's like a identity of their wisdom. And if you don't have humility and are able to bend and be willing to learn more, then what's the point? It's not an attack on your ego or your pride because the way you think about something is not correct.
It's funny you say that, because my mother, the other day when I was speaking to her on the phone, she's going to be 78 this year, but she's a pretty cool, hip 78-year-old, you know. Um, I mentioned it to her, you know, just what's been going on. And she, you know, I'm from the Lehigh Valley area, Allentown, you know, area. And her response to me was a lot different than I was expecting. I was expecting a response from similar to what you just said, Brittany, like, you know, our parents and the older generation. And her response was extremely empathetic and sympathetic and wanting to come up with a resolution and wanting to figure out how. And it really just took me back because here was my mother, who's a very staunch believed Italian woman, you know, who has strong values and beliefs at the age of 78, who is willing to learn. She knows that we have an issue and we need to put aside our differences to learn. And I think, Brittany, what you said is so accurate. Like, we need to learn from the people who need to teach us, and we need to listen to them, and we're not listening to them. If we were listening to them, this wouldn't be where it's at. But I don't know. I mean, how do we come up with that? How do we get to that point to listen? You know? But I think my concern with a lot of this too is not just the fact that we're you know, not as educated. This long term affecting trauma, that's going to happen to people over the last just 3 months, from March until now. You know, we've dealt with a lot of shit. Sorry, Dylan. I know you're gonna have to bleep that out, but we dealt with a lot of it, and we're going to be dealing with this trauma. We're going to be dealing with the aftermath. I mean, I was down in Kensington on Sunday. I saw them looting stores. I saw them destroying property of the small business owners who have been there forever, and that's all they have. And that's trauma. That's trauma to a community. It's trauma to individuals. Trauma to families. So now we not just have to have these conversations about racism and the effects it's having on us. Now we have the effects of the trauma because of the fact that people weren't willing to listen to it from the beginning.
I feel like
Sorry,
everything that's happening is it's like a foreshadow. For instance, what I had said with the discomforts of having to be in the pandemic, and people were making jokes and comparing it to being incarcerated, which is completely not true, and that just shows you the ignorance. And then you have the trauma that, you know, we have experienced just from this pandemic, and now you're seeing the result of generational trauma upheated, and through riots and through the protests and through the anger and through all of that pain. That's generational trauma. And it's like, who are we to say, like, I'm traumatized, and then to not see it like that? This is a lesson in empathy, and if you're not affected, you're not paying attention.
Kevin, how do you think this is going to be affecting you and what you do in your line of work and dealing with, you know, this fallout from this? And Brittany, I want to just go back to the empathy part. I'm so glad you said that, because I have a shirt that says "Make empathy great again," and I just feel that's the only thing that people can embrace right now is empathy, understanding. I don't want your "oh, I'm sorries." That's not, to me, understanding. You know, that's offering fluff. I want the I see you, I hear you, I'm listening, I'm open. So but thanks for that, Brittany. But yeah, Kevin, how about you? And what you're doing, how do you feel this is going to affect you? Is it going to make your job harder?
Well, I also want to say I love that comment, Brittany, about how this is a moment that if you aren't stretching and really challenging and feeling more empathy in a different way, and you know, speaking as a white person with a lot of privilege, if you're not reviewing everything that you know and do and participate in, then yeah, you're not paying attention. And I think that there's that whole, like, reevaluation that we should always be engaged in, but now is a political moment where lots of people are doing it at the same time, and it's so needed. To answer your question though, Britt, about in terms of the work aspect, we know that there's an increase in substance use, like we talked about earlier. We also know there's an increase in suicidality, which has been very much on my mind. I initiated a project where I got a group of people together, and we're just calling thousands of people and saying, how are you doing? Just, you know, what's going on? Doing this like little health scale thing to try to just get some sense of how people are. And it's been really well received in terms of people are like, they appreciated us checking up on them and trying to be proactive. And I think we've identified some people that had felt turned away from other, points of access and to try to get some mental health help and to try to engage them. It's really appreciated. So, I mean, trying to do stuff like that. There's a lot of data out there saying that we were already in a suicide crisis before all this mess, and now it's going to get even worse. Suicide, if you didn't know this, is the 10th leading cause of death.
And I thought about the suicide as well, because I think about the effects that this has on people in the mental health, and I thought about that suicide rate, and it wasn't something that we heard about. We weren't hearing about that, and we don't, and it's just sort of a shame, because I think once again that's knowledge that needs to be made aware to people, that this is a direct correlation between what's going on today and individuals and our society. And once again, it goes back to what Brittany said, is like empathy, understanding, embracing what we don't know and being accepting to it. But once again, like, how do we change that dialogue? How do we change that narrative to make people get it? And that's one thing that I don't know. And Brittany said it too. Here's 3 white people sitting on a call talking about it. Does that mean that we get our friends of color on a call? Well, yeah, but what does that show? I think we need to have groups of people talking about this constantly. Whether we're white, black, red, yellow. I think we have to have this type of sincere conversation on a daily basis. And it's not happening. I posted on actually, I didn't even do it. I have a guy taking over the Fill the Unknown Instagram page for the week, and I told him post some resources on the page, so people can find some resources, because we're a community page with 30,000 followers. And out of the 30,000 followers, only one person wrote something negative back to me. One person out of the 30,000 followers wrote, and his response was the full word of F off. Was all it was. And I looked at his profile, and it was hashtag Trump 2020, hashtag all lives matter. But then he also had his business out there too on it, and like his electrician business and stuff like that. But like, I was really impressed with the community, that we were going to bat and we were supporting our friends, the people that walk by us, our family. And only one out of 30,000 followers told me to F off. And actually, that means something to me. I know it sounds weird, but it means something to me, because I was expecting a lot more backlash. And why is that? Why do you think people are free of the backlash like others? Like, we're this is what we believe in. If we don't have those values, they attack us.
Because it challenges them to think outside of what they believe, and they take it as an attack on their ego and their pride.
You also think it's maybe a little ignorance? Like, I don't mean ignorance in like you're ignorant. I mean ignorance like they don't know, and they're totally blind to it, and they're not going to ever learn or educate themselves.
If people are unwilling to learn and they're unwilling to listen, I think it's very difficult to, and we work with this within harm reduction. It's all about meeting people where you're at, right? And self-preservation, and knowing like, how much energy am I going to delve into having this discussion with this person? Meeting them with empathy first. Say, oh, I understand. Okay, I can see why you say that, but maybe this. There's always another way. And if they're not going to respect that, cut them off. Use the energy for someone that is willing to learn. And that's not coming from a place of being an elitist or anything like that, because I myself have so much to learn as well.
Every day we have something to learn.
I
Kevin,
think
you were at a protest. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're in such a delicate moment in our country's history where we've really could become something that's not a democracy. And you know, I think that an analogy to 1933 in Germany is not hyperbole. I think that to have really strong, really clear political debate, I mean, I think at some point we have to pick sides, and you've got to fight for this, what you think is just and equitable and correct. And people, like, there's going to be the other side, and we know there's a strong opposition to that point of view. And I think we just have to pay those prices and keep pushing and keep, like, I know there's a lot of, in progressive circles, I know there's a lot of feeling that, voting isn't where it's at, and that's not worthwhile. We need a revolution. And I feel like this is a moment where we have to have hard, I understand what you're saying about saving energy for someone else, but I try to find ways of introducing ideas when I can that there's a middle ground that that sort of pulls people in a direction. And if they just won't do it and they're going to be hateful, then you got to stand up to that hate and be very, like, aggressive back and say, like, that's just absolutely awful, that's unacceptable, and that they need to be ashamed for those opinions. And so I think it's very hard to, I mean, I heard Brittany talk about trying to reconcile a harm reduction philosophy to the political realm, and I agree that starting with empathy is the way to build bridges, and that we should start there. But I think that different than taking a harm reduction approach, I think there's a point at which we have to fight. I mean, I think there's the other side of that. So I don't know.
Are either of you at this stage feeling tired?
Exhausted.
Yeah. Are you sleeping much? Yeah. No. Me either. How about you, Brittany?
I haven't been sleeping too well, no. And I can't take my mind off of what is going on to where I'm really checking what I'm complaining about right now, and it's almost like I'm seeing, like, I had to get off of Facebook, so I'm not currently active because of self-preservation, like, but also just Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter, and we have these riots, and you have people that are posting just willy-nilly stuff, and it's like, read the room. It's almost laughable, and I don't want to gaslight anyone from what they want to express, and if it's not related, but it's just seems incredibly insensitive, and it just so happens that those kinds of posts are coming from a demographic of people that all look the same.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And Kevin, you said right away, exhausted. You were quick to jump in there, and you out of all people know what it's like to be able to, that you have to maintain that healthy balance in order to, healthy body, healthy mind, all that stuff. What can we do, Kevin, at this point as individuals to maybe bring some of that healthy balance back, to feel a little bit better and maybe to get some sleep?
I don't have a deep wisdom on this. I mean, I think that on the one hand, I really like what Brittany was saying about the social media, that I do see people just having normal kind of, here's my cute cat kind of stuff, and I'm like, are you paying any attention, like, at all? But to go to Britt's point, maybe that's what they need. I mean, maybe they're just hanging on, and that them tuning out and focusing on the cat or whatever is their coping strategy, and maybe that's okay. But, like, damn, I'm with you. I think that it's this is a white middle America, middle class has not meaningfully grappled with racial justice issues in a generation, and it's long overdue.
I agree with that. It's been long overdue for, I mean, I can remember back to 1994 watching the entire Rodney King incident unfold.
Yep.
And, I came from the Lehigh Valley, from a town that is called White Hall. Okay. So yeah, okay. And you could chuckle because exactly, think about it, White Hall. My demographic of anybody other than, really Caucasian wasn't a large demographic in the area. So, going away to college was a culture shock to me to begin with. And then fresh out of college, on the heels of that, the Rodney King incident, that opened my mind and my eyes and my heart to so much more. And I just remember the pictures, and I remember the coverage, and I remember seeing what I saw, and, actually on live TV, seeing this happen, unfold as there. I know back then that I needed to do something. I know that I needed to embrace, knowledge. And, here I sit 26 years later, and I still don't have that knowledge. I still don't have all that wisdom from what happened then, because there's so much more to it. We're just these small little cogs in the whole, big scheme of it all. And, here, like I said, 26 later, and we haven't gotten much further. We've gotten worse, I believe. And I feel like I forget everything I know. And, I hope there's some type of answer out there for it, but for now, I love that the two of you feel that we need to listen. We need to turn all the BS off, and we need to open our ears and our eyes to what's going on out there. I mean, this is a daily thing. This didn't start with George Floyd. This didn't start with it. That was just the climax. That was it. That was the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So
Yeah.
we have a long road ahead of us, I believe, a long road. And I think it's safe for me to say it, but I'm a little afraid. Does that make sense? I'm afraid.
It goes to show you what can happen when you don't have true leadership.
On many levels.
Many levels.
On
We
many
have a platform for hatred right now, leading the circus. And you want to talk about making America great again? I think we need to make racists afraid again. It's despicable what's happening, and that we do not have leadership in any capacity. What are we doing? It always comes down to the people. It does.
And speaking of the people, I just got a little news flash on my phone. It wasn't even like a flash because I turned off the ABC notifications. A friend of mine just sent it to me, and it was about the vigilante squad out in Fishtown.
Yep.
I mean, here we are now taking matters in our own hands in different ways. Like, come on, what's that showing us? That I'm speechless about that. Anybody want to jump into that whole vigilante squad? Because I'm speechless.
Well, we're seeing a lot of vigilantism, right? I mean, all across America, we've seen armed white men storm like Capitol buildings because they don't want to wear masks and stay in their house. I mean, right? I mean, like all of
Right.
that is the nastiest, most ignorant, racist, version of macho ridiculousness. And this, yes, we have to, they should be ashamed of themselves. And I think that we need to create, I mean, I feel like that social media has given us this tool where it's very easy to push back and to both shame and feel shamed, and yet somehow there doesn't seem to be anything. I wouldn't say anything positive, but I at least can't detect a coherent way in which society is trying to use this tool in a good way, and you know, shame the hate mongers and uplift people that are trying to do something positive. It's not clear to me, at least yet, that we're doing that or know how to do it.
Brittany? You there, Brittany?
I'm here. I'm just thinking,
I knew it.
processing.
It's all good.
I'm not even sure, like, kind of what Kevin was saying about, you're seeing everybody protesting at the Capitals with their assault rifles, right? And I feel like our society has, and this also kind of dovetails what you said about being maybe more on the moderate liberal side of, everything is painted so black and white that it's like, because I'm a liberal does not mean that I don't support gun rights in the country. But I feel like there's just such a divide, like absolutely limitations on those gun rights to individuals that are responsible. But it's just constantly, oh, you're a liberal, you're a hippy dippy, you know what I mean? I've been called an idiot, like, online from a mutual friend, and my friend had told me, oh, well, you were probably just being controversial. And I can't even tell you how angry that still makes me when I talk about it, because it's like, I'm not being controversial by speaking to what is actually happening. And we deal with this a good bit, especially advocating for our people, because there was a lot of hatred with Safe House. There's a lot of hatred against drug users when Safe House came about, and it seems to be just, the divide is just consistent. It's black or white with certain people.
It's funny you brought up Safe House, and I'm glad you did, because I've been in South Philly a lot because of my business, and I have to be down there. And I'm thinking to myself, during this pandemic, what would have that been like then? What would that have been like with that, had that actually gone through and opened? Where would we have been with that aspect? You know what I mean? I think we're at a sort of a no-win situation with a lot of things. But have you thought about that at all, Kevin or Brittany? Like, would that have helped us during these times? Would that have, solved, or would it created more issues?
We know from science that it's a tool that works. We need all the tools that work right now. We know that we are that the opiate crisis is just getting worse, and we need all hands on deck. I mean, I also think that Safe House is the most controversial of those tools, and that we need all of them. We need attention to all of them. We don't have enough medication-assisted treatment. We don't have enough professionals that know how to work with people with addictions in a kind and helpful way. We don't have, lots of other just nothing is to scale in proportion with this crisis. This might get us too off topic, Britt, so if you want to not go here.
Listen, there is no topic. Go for it, please.
Well, so an interesting good thing that has happened since COVID is that they have changed the rules around access to medication-assisted treatment, right? They've expanded, by expanding telehealth for the first time. It's always been murky, but it's now clear, at least temporarily, that Suboxone can be prescribed just entirely through telehealth. That's entirely new. People that are methadone programs can get up to a month take home, regardless of other things, if that program allows that on a however they make that decision. And so those two changes, and there's more, but I'll just stick with those two. Those two changes are great and increase access and will help save lives, no question in my mind. Why did it take a pandemic of an infectious disease to change a policy where 500,000 Americans have died of opiate overdose? That didn't change the law. That didn't move a thing. But COVID did. And this is a good thing, and it's a positive change. I'm not trying to bash it, but it's just like, it's mind-bending to me that the death of 500,000 people was not enough to change these laws or the regulations. And I don't know. It's hard to tell up from down sometimes.
That's such a great point too, because it's funny. It usually takes a crisis to recognize another crisis. And sometimes it's too little too late. And working with medically assisted treatment and being advocates for that, all of us, I think it's important that people realize that, like, if you're going to be a voice in the substance use community, be a voice for medically assisted treatment. Make sure you do that. I love the fact that they can get Suboxone telehealth now. That's awesome. You don't have to
Yeah.
go into the clinic. You don't have to worry about finding a way to get to the clinic. You don't have to worry about it. Boom, telehealth, awesome. Because a
Yep.
lot of times the anxiety of just getting there for people is defeating in itself. It's a battle. So to be
Yep.
able to do that is amazing. That methadone, can you tell me that again? Because I did not know that, and I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah. So right when COVID hit, HHS and SAMHSA, that has the control over these regulations, relaxed the regulations for the first time ever since methadone clinics were set up in 1972. They relaxed the regulation in terms of they have a staged program. There's 6 stages and whatever, and most people are stuck coming every day, right? Like to make this as simple as possible, most people need to get dosed on methadone every day. And that you generally work up to take-home doses, and then you can get more take-home doses the longer you're there, and so forth. But they said that temporarily during COVID, people can get a month of take-home doses if that particular clinic agrees. Now, we've seen a lot of foot dragging. We've not seen wide implementation of this, but it has relaxed access to methadone, generally speaking.
That's interesting. Thank you so much. I think that the strides that we're making in the medically assisted treatment and the harm reduction community and with substance use disorder is getting there. I think, those voices are being heard, but it took many years as well. And I think, by raising more and more voices, issues like, substance use disorder and like racism and everything else out there can effectively be addressed and understood done the right way. You know, I and I'm a firm believer in that, and I just wonder what it's going to take once again to get there. Brittany, are you having trouble with any of getting to any of your participants that you've been working with over time that have been out in the streets? Have you been finding it difficult yourself to get out on the streets because of the COVID?
Absolutely. Yeah. Outreach levels have completely dropped on my end because I'm simultaneously starting a job where I will be in the emergency room. So I also have to be careful of my exposure rate, things like that. But I think with the more relaxation of the rules with medicated assisted treatment, and then we had DA Krasner changed some laws about possession of Suboxone, and it just goes to show you that these things are possible and they can happen. Like the stimulus check, it could happen. Like the things that, like on a broader scale, a lot of the resources that have come forward in the time of this crisis, it shows you that they are very much possible. My concern with the medicated assisted treatment, like what happens when you take away, when we try to go back, like why do we have to go back if this is working, and if it's working and the data shows that it's effective and it's removing these barriers that a lot of individuals face, why go back? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not quite sure a lot of people have an answer to that, but the medicated assisted treatment, Kevin, when you said it before about the Suboxone, I got to tell you, had that telehealth been available for me when I was, making the effort and the choice to get off of opiates, I probably would have gone the Suboxone route through telehealth. For me, honestly, it was actually the effort of getting to that clinic to do it. You know what I mean? Or going to the doctor to get it prescribed and going through those hoops like that. So I'm glad to hear that, there are some new strides being made that way. So that's awesome. Totally awesome. Kevin, we're running out of time a little bit here, Kevin. I know that, but Kevin, you made this huge effort to get on this morning. Both of you did. Brittany, you as well. Brittany, you schlepped from your place over here just so you can get some internet access. Kevin, you've been sitting in a parking lot all morning long for the last hour and a half. We're really doing the best we can to make it each and every day. What's something you could tell, the listeners, Kevin, during this time to, maybe, some Kevin Mooreisms,
I just, and we're all tired. I think we're all tired, but we have to keep fighting. This is a critical moment. And
Kevin, I think we're having trouble there with you, my friend. There you are.
yeah, I'm back.
Still can't hear you.
Still can't hear me.
A little bit.
I don't know what I'm doing.
There you go.
Yeah, you can hear me.
Now.
Okay. I'm exhausted. I think we're all exhausted, but this is the time to keep pushing and keep fighting and try to make a more equitable society and to make whatever contributions we can and to keep adapting and moving forward and to be kind to ourselves and others as we as people deal with life in different ways and deal with adversity in different ways and to try to just roll with as much as we can and make a difference where we can and make a stand when it's important and we have to put down our foot and say, no more extrajudicial killings by police officers ever. Period. Norway hasn't killed anyone in 10 years. Like, why? This isn't impossible. We can do this if everyone agrees and if everyone pushes and makes this happen. So much about the opiate crisis can greatly reduced. But we're not making those efforts. We're not investing, and we don't have the resources and people in place to try to be helpful. But we could. And so, I think we all have to push and use our voice. And thank you, Britt, for doing what you do and having community members and lots of voices come forward and speak our truth. This is the time to be heard.
Thank you so much for sharing, for sure. And I'm, if you're exhausted, get some rest. Please get some rest, Kevin. I mean, we're all exhausted, like you said. How about you, Brittany? What do you want to tell the listeners, during these times? Give them some, some of your Brittanyisms.
I think right now more than ever, we need to advocate direct action beyond passive advocacy and be vocal, but also inclusive and know when to stop talking and to just listen. A lot of people have, I learned this, my undergrad is in journalism, and one of the best tactics that you can do when you're interviewing someone and you want that really good information is you ask them a question, you let them respond, and then you let someone sit in that awkward silence. In the silence, that's when you get the good stuff because people want to fill it. And I think that's a lesson we can all take and to learn to just be a little bit more quiet, to amplify the needed voices, and to also be vocal in situations that call for us to speak up.
I love it. I love it. And the two of you, this was an hour of some intense conversation. We talked about, the pandemic. We talked about the racism. We talked about the riots. We talked about the substance use disorder. I think for us, this is just another day in our lives. And we talked about life. And I think more people have to have these conversations, just like we did, regardless of what color they are. But I think you're right. We need to start listening. And I appreciate what the two of you do each and every day. I appreciate the fight that each of you do each day, and I love your energy. And I want my listeners to be able to go back and check out your individual podcasts as well that I have with you. Dr. Kevin Moore, his podcast is out there, and Brittany Salerno, hers is out there. Both amazing individual podcasts. And this last hour was really amazing because you guys really helped put me at ease because I had a lot of anxiety this morning, like I do every morning I wake up. But you two really made me feel comfortable. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Britt.
Oh, you're welcome. And for our listeners out there, keep doing what you're doing. Make sure that you show up each and every day. Make sure when you show up that you listen. And when you listen, comprehend, digest. And if you don't ask questions, it's so important to ask the questions. Ask the right questions and educate and pay it forward. but do the best you can do. Keep on doing it. Remember, whatever it is that you stand for, be a voice as long as you don't hurt anybody along the way. Dylan, my man out there who has been listening to us each and every day as our sound engineer, thank you for doing this. Brittany and Kevin, and thank you, the rest of you. This is Britt Carpenter on Newsletter Radio. Have a great rest of your day. Be well.